the biggest points of feedback we've been getting on Mercy Falls PSP is people want to hear us talking about our reactions to it afterwards. So
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
yeah,
Fair
yeah, we've
enough.
gotten several comments like that. Like, I feel like I've been left hanging. I want to hear what you guys have to say about it. So let's give them that. Let's debrief. So out there at the outset that I thought this was a magnificent series. It was really incredible. It was some of the most refined role playing I've probably ever been a part of, and so I thank you all for that.
I want to say that one of the things that strikes me is I have, I'm a pretty controlled GM and a pretty controlled player. And I had several moments where I was like, where the character kind of took over, where I was really uncertain about the path, and I really had to think about it, and it went against some of my instincts, but I think we're right when it came to that, and that was really, really interesting for me.
Yeah, I think I got the distinct impression that each of you were like having really, really good feels about your characters and kind of what was going on, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
like really,
God, I
there
love
were
Margot.
there were tough decisions, but also like really satisfying like moments. And so yeah.
Letting me shut down Sister Mary for me was an absolute high point, and I appreciate you're doing that without
Yeah, and
like
I
going to
wasn't
a move or
and I
anything.
wasn't going to
That's
dice on
great.
that. Yeah, I was like, no, that's exactly what would happen. It's a perfect ending there. So
Oh,
yeah.
there was such good story beats like that throughout the game. I really liked how we saw some more depth in Jonah's character this
Mhm.
time, that growth. Um, Margot still probably hates him because she doesn't have a clue that any of that growth has happened. But
Right.
as a player sitting here watching you fill up with Jonah, that was just not where I expected Jonah to go at all. And it was the thing where if I was watching the TV show, I'd be like, no way, there was just a lot of really neat moments. And like playing Margot it was really super easy. The hardest thing was figuring out the whole death thing, and then I came up with the tentacle thing. But otherwise, she's been a super easy character to play, and I think that's just because, with Werewolf, you're leveraging off that anger
Mhm.
and angst, and those are really easy reactions to figure out. Lashing out is the way to go.
But no, that's interesting. I mean, I think I think Margot's definitely a more straightforward character in terms of like her place in the fiction. But I don't think it's a bad thing. Like to me, what I like about Margot, what I really appreciate about Margot's story is Margot in mainline Mercy Falls, Margot is our bridge to the broader mythology, right? Like Margot is our gateway to the bigger mythology of the campaign, right? And to the extent that that's an important part of this campaign, that's sort of like that backstory, that what came before, that there are people even more ominous and dangerous than Big Man and Sister Mary Edward Price, right? Like just the fact that, and Thomas, like the fact that all that exists and that Margot is a major bridge to that is really satisfying to me as GM. Like as a GM, like I find that really satisfying. Like you guys, Big Man took himself off the table. Thomas was killed. Sister Mary Edward Price was killed, and that should feel relief, or like that should feel like a relief. That should feel like, okay, these villains are done. But then like we have these unseen villains in Catherine Forsyth and the sheriff, and we have this interesting character in Adeline / Jacqueline, right? Like, so it's like there's a bigger thing going on, and I love that. So, and Margot is very much like our vessel for that, right? Which I think is a really important role to serve. So.
There are two things I want to point out. One, I thought that the Phillips turn there towards the end was brilliant and organic and just absolutely dynamite, just really, really good.
Yeah.
And I also want to say, so cheering for Lilith's moment there at the end. That was great. That was the sort of heroic victory. Dark, but a heroic victory in some ways.
Yeah, Lilith very much like became like the first actress listed in the credits, right? Like that Lilith very much became like the lead character in this story, right? The heroine of the story, right? Like in many ways. I loved the Fae Court stuff. Ended up being, it actually came out of surprise. It came out of left field for me a little bit, because it's when I'm thinking about the sort of like cosmology of Mercy Falls, right? Like the Fae Court stuff has always been like adjacent to that for me, right? Like it's always been like adjacent to this sort of like seedy underbelly storyline, right, of Mercy Falls, right? And I like that, like the Fae Court stuff, particularly in this session, became so pronounced and so like forward, right, in the story. And again, it's like another avenue, right? It's like, okay, now we have this character Alistair, right? What's his deal? He's clearly, I've clearly set him up to be a villain of some sort, but like not in the Thomas manner, right? Like he is a different kind of Fae villain. So
it was really interesting because at the beginning of season 3, we were like, oh, let's not focus on Thomas.
We still kind of didn't. We only saw Thomas at the very end.
But like in a way, it kind of made it so much more rewarding when we came back to him, right? Like when he started coming back through again, he was so much more of a like scary force, than I feel like he was when he was in the spotlight.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty happy that we did that we kind of pulled Thomas away from. I think it was easier to take him more seriously as a villain in this mode, whereas in the second series he was a jerk and he was not likable, and he was just kind of cruel and petty,
he
and
just
mercurial.
Felt like a sociopath, and
he's just a sociopath, right? Exactly. Yeah, but there was a switch there, right? Like there was a good fictional justification for that. We've touched on it only lightly in this series, but basically when Big Man did his calculations during that math class and showed and was like revealing things to everyone, ostensibly, but definitely to Thomas, I think Thomas, like pretty much from that moment onward, like Thomas like receded, right? And he kind of like got caught up in his own business, and I think that was just a reflection of that, right? So.
Yeah, I think Lilith is probably my favorite character that I've ever played, and it was a little bit at the beginning. It gave me a little bit of anxiety actually to try to do the female protagonist a lot of justice, and I think I managed that. Like she had a great arc, and I definitely wanted to cash in on the like her anger being justified and not being put down, and like subverting a few like horror slasher tropes of like around women and those being put into those situations and stuff. And so it was all very cyclical and satisfying, and I love how she turned out, just because I had no idea that she was going to take that turn to be like a more badass, confident woman until I got the conditioned dyke, and I was just like, what would happen here? Then it all just unfurled really organically and naturally from there. And I really liked that she had that moment where she used Thomas's own desire against him to take him out. And I like sort of fucking with him at the end and being like, maybe you won't even come back, bitch. Right?
I love the gender power dynamics in play. I don't know if you picked up on it or not, but like when you were like having that first encounter with Alistair, when he was like, you may not be able to understand this, so I'll try to keep it in simple terms, right? Like that was very much supposed to feel like I am the man who knows a thing that you couldn't possibly understand, right? Like he was gonna face-plain it to you or whatever.
That's
right?
What I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like that you didn't make it easy for me either, right? Like you were like, well, like it's still a miss, and I know you're in your darkest self, but you're gonna have to like put up or shut up basically still.
Yeah,
And so it was a good little like nudge to be like, hey, go do your thing with her.
Yeah, that miss totally dictated how that scene played out, right? Like with going back to the your Fae people, right? And Alistair showing up and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
I also really like dropping the sounds like he needs a jury.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that was oh, Lilith. There were so many good moments. I loved Ellen's turn and arc was so good and so powerfully realized and really really I like how like there were 3 options presented and she took none of them, right? Like I liked that. I liked that Ellen found her own path, right? I think that was really important, that it didn't end up that she didn't go into one of these darker places, and I think that was really good. I thought it was a good character arc. Like I'm not even sure like where Ellen goes from here, right? Like
no, I'm done.
She
and
feels
I'm
retired.
Very happy with it.
Yeah, she feels completely retired. Like I don't know where that character goes, and so that feels. Yeah, I agree with you. It feels done, which is good. Like that doesn't happen very often, right? We don't often get like these nice, satisfying wrap ups, right, on a character. So
it's like we had some happy ending stuff going on here, and I was totally here for it. Like it was wonderful.
yeah, it really was. Yeah, I mean, yeah, happy. Yeah, I mean, Margot's situation was, they were all kind of happy endings in their own way, right?
Margot never changes for anybody, right? I think that's her happy ending. She's like, you can prompt me to become this monster, but in the end, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. Like you'll never change me.
Yeah.
Even her, it was her choice to even see the lie of the town. She didn't have to do that. She chose it.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, it's so it's interesting. Like I do think Ellen's story is done. I think Margot and Lilith definitely have more story coming, right? I'm pretty sure Jonah does. I have a feeling Alistair intends more for Jonah, right? Than just here, come be happy with me in the forest, right? Or maybe not. I don't know. I mean, maybe he's maybe not. But I love it.
I feel like Jonah has changed like a lot this session, and
I mean, you gave up being a queen. I mean, like
and he's if we continue this, he's definitely not going to be a queen anymore. He's probably going to be a ghoul because he's already kind of a ghoul in a way.
Yes.
So, and he's also grown up a little bit, so I think he'll probably be taking a couple of grown-up moves. But yeah, that scene at the Yule Ball was like probably the feeliest I've ever been playing a game.
It was really good. I loved it. You mean the one where they're like where the group of you are there off to the side talking about the future, right? Yeah, I love that. Like it had the makings of like that sort of like tropey, like, well, now high school's over, we're never gonna see each other again, right? kind of thing, right? Yeah, it had that feeling to it, which I really loved. So
yeah, that was great. And I totally like going into the session, I wasn't thinking anything at all like, oh, I'm gonna dissolve my gang.
Right. Yeah.
This season I was kind of actually having a bit of a problem with Jonah because I was like, oh, he's kind of turning into this monster. I'm not sure where to take that.
Yeah.
And I was playing that up a lot. Like I was playing up the monster stuff, like with what he did to the delivery boy. That was pretty cool. But then like after that I was like, okay, now that he's been the monster, what does he want now? And it's like, oh, okay, he wants to accept this other side of him and kind of move on. And that kind of included, like kind of severing himself in a way from his crew and letting them have their normal life because he's not a normal kid anymore.
Yeah. I love it. I thought it was a great character arc. It was pretty terrific. yeah, there's so many things for me because maybe apart from Fraser, like no one understands the complete broad sweep of the Mercy Falls mythology better than I do, right? And so I know all the little crevasses, right, and the implications of every little tiny thing. And what I love about that moment with Jonah is we have the mirror in Mercy Falls 83 of a Jonah like motifed character. It's not Jonah, but it's like someone who is just the monster, right? Like they are just the monster. They don't even speak. They just like have these like guttural, like heavy breathing and snorts, right? Like they are just pure monster and terrifying, right? Like legit scary. And I love this. To me, there was like so much like texture in that moment when you're with Alistair and he's like, I've been watching you for a very long time, right? Like, not only was that an echo of what he said to Lilith, but it also had like, there's an insinuation there, right? Like there's a sort of like insinuation of like, what does it mean when he says he's been watching you for a long time, right? Like to me, those like possibilities are super exciting and really textured and interesting. So yeah, very, very satisfying.
And it's really neat for the Gauntlet too, because it's really satisfying in a different way because we have our complete stories with each series, and then we have the overarching.
Yeah, if you want to look at the you can. Like you don't need to. Like it doesn't affect your enjoyment at all. Like that's been probably my most favorite thing of Hangouts this year is like you don't have to go back and watch the Cthulhu Dark episodes. You don't have to have been there, right? But for the people who like keep up with the whole broad sweep of it, I think Lauren does too, is another one. You get like that whole full big story, right? Like it's a big, interesting playground of stuff, right? So that all kind of like connects and intersects.
And it kind of vindicates how the Gauntlet does its series, right? We kind of proved this year that the way that we game can lead to different satisfaction for the series, and then these longer ones going on, at least that I'm aware of. Like I haven't been gaming with you guys that long, but it seemed like a new thing, this like longer overarching series returning and returning.
I tried with Company of the Three Kings Dungeon World last year, but it wasn't nearly as refined as We Have the Keepers was, and not even like close to as refined as what Mercy Falls was. But what I love about it though, and a conversation that I hope we continue to have as a community next year, is how do we do open table play in a way that is like that can feel long term and super satisfying. Like I know Lowell's getting ready to do his quarterly games, which I think is going to be a really interesting thing to see how that plays out. I want more of that, right? Like I would love for everyone's games to be like, the Veil : XYZ session 104, right? Or whatever, right? Like I would like to see more of like storylines, right? Like so that like if someone's doing a specific storyline, like you can go and find that storyline and get the whole full sweep of it. It's I don't think it's easy to do. Like I'm going to make sure we tell a complete story in these 4 sessions, but that do not depend on you knowing anything else about what happened, while also at the same time building up a world that is satisfying for anybody who is paying attention, right? And it's an intensely satisfying way of organizing and running a game, I will tell you. And it's a fun challenge for sure. But I want to see more of it. Like I would love to see more of it. Like I love the idea of Gauntlet Hangouts transitioning from this like sort of cabined off, like we're trying this for this month and now we're doing some new thing this next month. I would like for us to, I love the blend of like, okay, we're still doing open tables or limited or like sort of like, somewhat limited open tables, like in the sense that like I'd like to have everybody for this month at least, right? Month-to-month open tables while also building out while having like long-term campaigns, right? Like I think it's a great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like with Mercy Falls, we put like a really strong emphasis on like, okay, we want to tell this good story. We want to do like the Monsterhearts seasonal, like episodic seasonal format. And so like going into it with that expectation and having all the players on board. Like, for example, Lowell came in season 2, but because he was on board with that goal, it worked great. Like, we had such a good story with Ellen coming in, and having Fraser out last season and Yoshi out this season, it was a fantastic story.
Yeah, I think what's going to be
because we were
exciting
all
is
on the same page.
Yeah, what I think is going to be like what I loved about like introducing Lowell's character or introducing Ellen in the second series was it was really smooth, and like it didn't depend on Lowell knowing what happened before, and Ellen just slotted right in, right? And Ellen's story is part of the bigger mythology, and maybe we don't see Ellen ever again on screen. But like, there's no reason why we can't do callbacks to Ellen, right? In the future, there's no reason why, maybe next time we have Serena back, and we will just find a way of working Serena back into it, just like we did with Lilith this time, right? Like, there's I find it super interesting. It's a new way of running games for me because, like I said, I don't really do long-term campaign games. So
this and We Hunt the Keepers seems like I was saying, like a vindication, a proof of concept, right?
Yeah, in a way. Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah.
And I'll echo what Jason said too. It was awesome playing with you guys, and everyone was super on point and so present and interesting and great. I think I was looking forward to this weekly. Yeah.
It's been some of the most fulfilling gaming I've had at the table, and not just for the way I've been able to play, but it's by far the best collaborative play I've experienced.
Yeah.
And it's totally changed the way I work with other groups that I'm in. And now that I'm starting to run again after, I don't know, like a 20-year break from running, how I even talk to my players about what I want at the table, so that we match up. And if they're like, nah, I don't, then they can self-select out of that.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's where the Gauntlet community, in fact, I think you mentioned it. I can't remember if it was during one of the podcasts, Jason, that having that paywall there ensures that people are showing up.
It's had an interesting effect, right? Yeah. I think it's led to a certain level of seriousness at the table, which I'm really happy about. And it's also had the interesting effect of like, we are ostensibly an open public group, but we've managed to kind of like carve out little spaces for ourselves, right? Like Lowell gets a lot of the same players. I get a lot of the same players. Michael gets a lot of the same players. And I believe Rich does too, although Rich's games are a little bit more diverse and more, kind of.
And I'll actually say I have over the course of the year had a really interesting cycle where I'll have a lot of the same players, and then it kind of shifts, and that's been really nice to see a lot of different people, sort of that churn of interests.
Yeah, you get a nice mix. Like I find myself having like, I mean, there's always a really strong chance I'm going to have Fraser, Jennifer, or David, right? Like there's always a really, really strong chance that I'm going to have one or more of them in a game I'm running. And they're my constants, and they are like the people that like, they're my ringers. They're my like ride or die ringers. Like I know I can throw to them, and like, and it's all going to be cool, right? Like I know that, but I also like it. But there's also like a mix, yeah. Someone manages to like Kyle Hodnett managed to slip into the fire this month, and like it was great. Like he was clearly new to my table, like, and I think he had there was a tentativeness in his play because he was still trying to kind of figure out like kind of how he fit in and kind of the dynamic, which is totally normal. But we talked about that afterwards, right? Like on debrief, we were like, hey, like, what could we have done to make you feel like more like you wanted to grab the spotlight more? And he was kind of like, no, I was cool. Like I just, I was just scoping it out, feeling it out. And I think he now feels like I feel better about next time, right? So that is a really fun dynamic. But we're a little off topic, I guess. But I just want to say that, yeah, I think like I said before, this was some of the most refined role playing. I mean, it was unbelievably refined. Like when I say refined, I mean being so present, like Fraser said, so present and so conscious of the story beats and so conscious of like the arc and the sweep of what we were doing. That to me is a level of like very refined thinking toward story that we don't get often, and I really appreciated it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I really enjoy too that, like it means a lot to me that Lauren watched Mercy Falls and then now she's playing in Mercy Falls.
I know, yeah,
83, right?
that's really satisfying to me. Yeah, like, and Garrett too. Garrett watches all of them too, and now Garrett's playing in '83, right? So that's super satisfying to me. Yeah,
I hope more people, listen to this and take the step to come and game with us. It doesn't have to be Mercy Falls. It could be whatever you want to play. Play with Lowell, play with Rich, play with Jason, play with a whole bunch of people. Just put up their calendars.
Well, and that's why it goes back to what I was saying earlier about, like, I would love for there to be more of these like named storyline event type campaigns, right? Because I think that there's a marketing aspect to that, right? Like there is I was like on our Slack when people say Mercy Falls, like they don't even say Monsterhearts anymore. They just say Mercy Falls, right? Like that's a thing, right? Like I would love to see more of that in the community. Like I would love to see more of, like, like I said, like I'm in the Veil neon cyberpunk jam or whatever, right? I don't know anything about cyberpunk. Or I am in Dungeon World, the XYZ, right? Like that kind of thing. So
or the watch too. People are running the watch a lot now. That could be there's so many spaces. I mean, and going one step further, maybe it's not even the same game. Like I love what Rich is doing with Star Wars, right? Like that's great. Like that's a really, really like what Rich is doing with Star Wars on Saturdays going forward is like super interesting to me, because he's playing in the same campaign world but with different systems, which he's had a lot of experience with that with GCL, right? But I love that idea.
Yeah, I did that Fate sort of Game of Thrones 4-session thing that I really loved, and we kind of built a world, and I'm like, maybe we'll go back to that.
Do something with it,
on the ground level, with Dungeon World or whatever.
Yeah, I think that would be terrific. I mean, the real key thing though is like to I hate this word, but like to brand it, right? To be like, this is the thing, right? It is the XYZ, like that's what that's what I think that's what our players respond to. I think they respond to being part of something big like that. So
and it has totally like infected the play culture a little bit. We haven't really talked about this, but like I played a pickup Dungeon World game last weekend with Maria, Patrick, and Charles, and like we created a setting at the table, and like it was called Shirkaris on High, and it was like this weird like gods arena type thing. And it's like right after we were done, like Maria goes and creates a private channel called Shirkaris on High, and they're like saying, "Oh, we want to run this game for other people. We want to run this setting for other people." So all of a sudden, like that culture of like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna continue."
I love that.
This ongoing
that's
thing.
everything I want to hear right now. I love it.
Yeah.
Like that's so good. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah,
I think we found some good space to balance branding and references without requiring that intimate knowledge, and I think that for me is the real key, because the transition for me into session 2 was so good that I felt like there was this lovely background, and I saw what it was, and I kind of discovered things, but I didn't need to have watched that. I felt like I organically moved along.
The way I've treated both We Had the Keepers campaign world, which it's just called that. It has no name or anything. But the way I've treated the We Had the Keepers campaign world and the way I've treated the Mercy Falls campaign world, like to me, the backstory and the broader campaign world, I've been treating it like, I hope so. I've been treating it like an invitation rather than a mandate, right? And I think that's really I think that's the difference, right? Like I invite you to be a part of that if you wish, but you don't have to be a part of that. It's not going to affect right now. So
it's not required they have information. The things you have to do, the problems you have to solve, don't require knowledge of the outside games.
Or at the very least, you should be able to explain like pretty briefly at the top of the series like what they need to know. So Cool. Any other last minute bits? I know it's all been roses and no thorns, but whatever. Thomas is dead, so that makes sense. I mean, like, I can't think of a thorn. I thought this was so good. I don't even know where to go. Like,
I wish that I had, when I walked off, I wish I had when the camera did that we saw Ben maybe come up and walk alongside me.
oh yeah, that would have been nice. Yeah, poor Ben. The poor Ben's was God. Ben's story was just so like.
Oh yeah.
The magic of editing will maybe it'll happen.
Yeah. Retcon. It's good. It's good. Okay, well, that was super fun, guys. I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm gonna stop this.